EJ, the 49ers are back. The Eagles never left. And the Bengals still 3-0 against the Chiefs in their last 3 meetings. The NFL, as always, the best reality show on planet Earth. And we're going to break it all down today. Jay, roll the open. There we go. Elite cork sound to start off the show today. EJ, my wonderful co-host. I have Balcones Lineage Texas Single Malt for the show today. We picked this up in Texas while we were there, actually.
Yeah, at 10 a.m. as the liquor store opened. So
they were open. Just saying.
We got those looks. We were the first ones. We were the guys outside doing the old Mervin's commercial, right? Open, open, open.
We have some very interesting news to start off the show. With news and notes, as we normally do. John Robinson, at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, fired kind of out of nowhere. Not going to lie. Like, we are in week 13. You know, the Titans are on pace to, again, win the AFC South somewhat handily. This is a team that went to the AFC Championship game 3 years ago. They were the 1 seed in the AFC literally last year. They have not had a losing season under John Robinson. They're about to win the division for like the 4th straight year. And they fired him. And nobody really knows why yet. I mean, people have their theories. Obviously, there have been mistakes made in terms of the management of the roster, offensive line, kind of a mess. The things they've done to try to address the offensive line, like drafting Isaiah Wilson, didn't work out super well. The Tannehill contract continues to kind of be an anchor, so to speak, tied around their feet. There are problems on the roster, but that being said, they still win a lot of games, and they're still a pretty good team. And last time I checked, this team had Kansas City on the ropes with a backup quarterback like a month ago. So I guess we can attribute a lot of that to Vrabel being an elite coach, which he is, but there's still a lot of good players on this roster. The defensive line is good. There's some secondary pieces we love. Some of their young weapons, like Treylon Burks coming along, Chig looks really fun. They've got dudes. They've got dudes, and they fired John Robinson, and I'm a little bit surprised because they literally just extended him in February. And now he's gone. So maybe there's a story we haven't heard yet. Again, we are recording this like an hour and a half after the news came out. But I'm pretty shocked by it. EJ, what say you?
There's something else here. People say, oh, it's been brewing for a long time. I fully understand that. I understand that, the Titans brass, the ownership decides that, hey, we're not happy with the direction. That's what you do the day after the season ends. You do not do it in week 13. The timing is highly unusual for those of you that don't follow these kind of things. I can't think of the last in-season GM firing, and if there was one, they certainly weren't in first place in their division and the previous year's 1 seed in their conference.
In-season for a good team. Yeah, that's the distinction.
This is weird. It's just really odd, and I know the look is not good. They just played A.J. Brown, the receiver that they traded away and got smoked by him. That's perception. That's emotion. That is not the way you make these decisions on a successful football team. And the Titans are, make no mistake, a very successful football team. They tend to do these things in the right way. It is not a knee-jerk type of decision. Yes, you can look at the overall resume and you can say, if we're talking about misses, and again, all GMs miss. Drafted Isaiah Wilson, 29th overall. Drafted Darrington Evans, 93rd overall. Drafted Caleb Farley, 22nd overall. Dylan Radins, 53rd overall. Traded away a 2nd and a 4th for a washed-up Julio. Traded A.J. Brown away. Signed Bud Dupree to a huge contract. I get all of that, but the weirdest thing is the thing you said last. All of that happened before they signed him to an extension.
Yeah, so if they were okay with it back then, and they're still going to make the playoffs this year, what changed? Because for every bad move that he's made, he also drafted Jeffrey Simmons. He picked up Danico Autry for a steal And he was, before he got hurt, he was like top 5 in pressures in the entire league. Harold Landry was a pick of his. Treylon's coming along. He was looking pretty good. Last time I checked, and we'll see what he becomes. But Chig looks like it's going to be a good piece for the future. Kyle Phillips, at least again before he got hurt again, was looking like a really good value pick on day 3 for them. There's a lot of good players on this team. Like Christian Fulton, that was a John Robinson pick. Like even going back to his time in New England, because remember, he came from Tampa, but before Tampa, he was in New England. He was their director of college scouting for a 4-year period. In just that 4-year period, this is the core of an entire second half of the Patriots dynasty that he was overseeing. In that time period, from 2009 to 2013, they drafted Gronk, they drafted Edelman, Chung, McCourty, Sebastian Vollmer, Darius Butler, Cannon, Solder, Donta Hightower, Chandler Jones, Deron Harmon, Logan Ryan, Jamie Collins. All of those were his picks in a 4-year period. Like, this dude can pick players. And I get it. He had a couple rough years in the draft, but this year's class looked really good. And they were still managing. They were still surviving. I feel like he built up a lot of goodwill that ran out a lot quicker than maybe it should have. And there's a lot worse GMs that got a lot longer leashes. And I don't know. There has to be something else there. I refuse to believe it's just because the offensive line in the Tannehill contract. Like, it can't just be that simple, right?
Just tell everybody that you're really pissed because this is the guy that believed in Stonehouse and picked him up, and now he's gone, and you're just butthurt about it. You're angry.
I mean, he was right.
He was absolutely right. We're making punter jokes because we just don't understand this move. We don't understand the timing. We don't understand the timing relative to giving your GM a nod of approval, a contract extension, and the fact that, again, the roster is loaded. We didn't even talk about Nicholas Petit-Frere, who's starting for them at right tackle right now. All of these young players are developing. They are winning. They're in first place. There is something going on here. There is something that happened or was said or some kind of, they call it creative differences when a band breaks up, right? There are some creative differences that are going to come to the surface here, or maybe not. Sometimes we don't get to hear about these things, but it is more than just his player personnel record and the overall result on the franchise. Because again, as you said, lots of these young guys are contributing right now already. They're starting to look good. And the team's winning. This is not the time you make this kind of move unless there's something else.
I guarantee you his agent has already gotten no fewer than 10 calls. 100%. Because his reputation is sterling in the league as a person and as a talent evaluator. He's going to have a job immediately. Like, I'm not worried about him, to be perfectly honest. It sucks that his family's going to have to move, but he's going to have a job because everybody knows that John Robinson's really good at what he does. So maybe we'll hear about a true why at some point, but for now, I don't know. I don't know.
It's just really odd news to start a Tuesday with. I saw the
news
news about an hour before we started doing pre-show, and I was like, no, fake account, baloney. Nobody does that. Oops.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that being said, now that that's the only real news we have so far, to be honest. But now that news and notes is done, why don't we go back and eat a little bit of crow, EJ? Because we sat here on this channel on Thursday night during our TNF live stream, and it was Bills-Patriots, and we thought the Bills were going to win. But we also apparently were way more confident in the Patriots offense to be even remotely watchable than they actually were. And that kind of bit us in the ass, and we really flopped on our prize pick slip for that game. We're going to talk about the play calling specifically for the Patriots coming up here, but I think my main takeaway from watching TNF, and I've watched that game 3 times now since to try to understand both the Buffalo side and the New England side. Patriots are in a bad spot, like a really bad spot, and not just play calling wise, like personnel wise. They cannot compete at the highest levels of this league. They are not even close. They need a guy like John Robinson to come back to find them some players, because the gap is way wider than I thought it was back in August. Like, I thought they might have been okay. They are not okay. They are in a horrible position personnel-wise right now.
100% agree with all that. And yes, a guy like John Robinson, strangely with his heritage in terms of having been in the Pats front office before, would be a good choice. But we need to talk about the elephant in the room here. You
Me?
bet on a kicker.
Okay, hold on. If he didn't miss, I would have hit on that.
Hold on. You bet on a kicker, and then you jinxed said kicker right before that kick. Like, this is the double nut shot. You basically kicked yourself in the nuts twice. You bet on a kicker. Never do it. It's a bad idea. And then you said, geez, don't screw this up for me right before he went back for the leg swing. And sure enough, what happens?
He's been good this year. What can I say?
Until you jinx him on our Thursday night live stream broadcast. Anyways, bad slip. We ate it. We were playing with house money from Thanksgiving. We are going to do what NFL teams do and burn the film and just say, nope, not a lot to be learned from that slip except don't bet on a kicker. And the deeper one, the takeaway that we'll talk about a little bit later on in more depth. The Patriots are beyond struggling right now. They are ill-equipped to win, certainly win their division, which is where you start. And they did that for so many years, decades, if you want, that everybody's used to it. This ain't that team. This is not your dad's Patriots. This is not your grandpa's Patriots were probably still pretty good because Tom Brady played a long time. Your great-grandpa's Patriots weren't good. This team looks more like those teams. And New England fans have had such a run of success that they're very unfamiliar with that look. They're going to have to get familiar unless the Patriots can string together a couple of drafts like the Seahawks just had, or the Texans had, or the Jets had, where they have a good haul of 5 to 6 young players that come in and really make a difference quickly. Save that. This is going to be a couple years of digging out of the hole.
The one thing that I do want to bring up about this game that's non-New England is, because we're not going to talk about Buffalo for the rest of the episode because we talked about them a lot, but I do want to note from this game, before we leave it, the Bills are running the ball like a lot. And over the last 3 games, they are top 10 in the NFL. They are 10th in the NFL, which by their standards is incredible for percentage of plays called being runs. That is unthinkable for what the Bills were in the first couple months of the season. I think that Allen's injury kind of lit a fire under them of like, hey, maybe we shouldn't Cam Newton this guy that we sunk a gazillion dollars into. Maybe we should let Devin Singletary carry more of the load. Maybe we should give more carries to Cook, all that kind of stuff, because he's still going to get his rushing attempts. Like, he hit one of the only things we actually hit was the over of 7.5 rushing attempts, because he will scramble every now and then. So he still had 8 carries, but he didn't lead them in carries. He didn't. He wasn't the entire ground game in addition to being the entire pass game. Like, they've actually run the ball and committed to running the ball a lot over the last 3 weeks by their standards. And that's a massive development because they're a more balanced team now. And I think that even though, maybe the point totals won't be the same, maybe the flash plays won't be the same, I think they're a better team when they run the ball and they limit Allen having to do everything. Not that he can't do everything, but making it so he doesn't have to do everything has completely changed the outlook of this team. It's gotten them through a rough period where they're still trying to get guys back healthy because they've had a lot of durability issues this year, and they've gotten through this stretch by running the ball. And that, to me, is one of the biggest stories of Buffalo's season, is that they're finally not making their quarterback shoulder the entire offense by himself.
This is what we led the Thursday live stream with. If there was a better promo for our Thursday live streams, I don't think it exists. We led the Thursday live stream with the idea that since Josh Allen hurt his elbow, the Bills have been forced, against their best judgment, or maybe their better wishes, to be more balanced. They have to be, because Josh cannot do the things that they were asking him to do before, and we posited that result would be better because it would bring more of the team into play and bring more of them into contributing to those wins, instead of just saying, hey, Josh, go be a superhero. That's our plan. Josh, go be a superhero, as opposed to, hey, we have all this talent. We need to diversify. We need to stress more areas of the defense by using more of these players. They've done it successfully. It's carried them through. They've figured out ways to win. and they look like a better and more balanced team for the stretch run, and that is indeed huge.
So we're going to get back to it this Thursday. We have Raiders-Rams out here in Southern California. I'm sure that stadium is going to be just packed with Raiders fans. So that's going to be our Thursday game this week. Make sure to stop by for the live stream. We're going to put together another slip, and we're going to put together Sunday slips too, because Prize Picks, for all the bootleg faithful, they're offering a free square for all of you, because you guys really like that on Thanksgiving weekend. The Justin Jefferson square paid off for a lot of you. They're offering another free square this Sunday for Justin Herbert over 1/2 passing yard. So as long as he gets 1 passing yard, which he probably will, assuming a comet doesn't hit the stadium, you get a free square. So that just gives you one step closer to hitting on these 25x payouts or 20x payouts, depending on how many you put in. Huge deal from them. So we thank Prize Picks for making that available for all the bootleg listeners. If you want to go to prizepicks.com, or really the link in the description below, use promo code BOOTLEG. That will match your deposit up to $100. Whatever you happen to put in, they will double it so that you get more money to play with. Again, Justin Herbert free square this Sunday. Make use of it while you can. And with that, EJ, let's get to 3 Up. 3 Up, number 1, EJ, Bengals Chiefs. We have to lead off this segment with this. This is perhaps the rivalry in the AFC at this point. This is the Chiefs' boogeyman, and the Chiefs are widely considered, well, maybe before this week, were widely considered to be the best team in the AFC. Now, I would say Cincy has thrown their hat in the ring to make a run at the 1 seed here, and maybe have the playoffs run through Ohio this year. And I would say that this is kind of the clash of the Titans right now in the conference. It's the one team that KC just cannot get over. And there's a couple different reasons for that. And I kind of felt like this game was similar to the last two, but with slightly different flavor. But the top level point is KC's DBs, which they have a lot of young guys we love. It's a very young secondary, but it's very talented. But their DBs at this point are not equipped to handle Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Even Samaje was running over him. Hurst had his catches. Tyler Boyd almost had a bigger game, but dropped an easy touchdown. But the entire collection of skill position players here, they are not ready to handle them yet. You look at the last throw on 3rd and 11 to ice the game, like a gotta-have-it situation. We cannot give the ball back to Pat Mahomes because that would be potentially disastrous. Let's throw a slant to T. Higgins one-on-one against Josh Williams. Really talented, tall, lanky corner with range. He was right in his hip pocket. He was right there. The coverage was not bad at all. But Burrow, under pressure, guy in his face, dropped it right there for him. I'm talking 3 inches outside of Williams' hands. And T caught it, iced the game right then and there. Jamar had 8 catches for a whole bunch of yards. Trent McDuffie held up well, but everybody else got torched, to be perfectly honest. And I think that this team, because this is a Bengals offense that can go blow for blow with Pat Mahomes when they really need to in clutch moments, they are kind of like the KC Achilles heel because they just won't die. And they're very similar to the Chiefs in the sense that they just won't die. And when KC goes up against another team with their own serial killer at quarterback, some of the other deficiencies on the roster get laid bare a little bit, and they're prone to lose.
We've framed the Bengals for these last 3 games as kind of plucky, as upstarts, as challengers to the throne. This game feels like that's shifted a little bit. They're 3-0 versus the Chiefs in their last 3. And you said something interesting with Burrow under pressure. I don't think Burrow feels pressure. I really don't. He hasn't since LSU. We've said this since his pre-draft analysis. This guy is an assassin. Rich Eisen did a whole thing on this, but it just hit on lots of the high notes that we have said about Joe Burrow. And Eisen said something interesting. He said that Burrow looked like he was pretending before to be that cool guy, to be the guy in control, and now he sounds like he's been in the league 20 years. Mm-hmm. He fully expects to be that guy. He is that guy. He makes those throws all those throws. The coverage wasn't bad. The DBs did okay. If we really want to talk about where KC fell off, their linebacker play was atrocious. But the Bengals didn't look like upstarts in this game. The Bengals looked like they knew they were supposed to win this game, and Burrow is the reason. Like, Burrow is the key. You can say about Jamar Chase unlocking Burrow's potential, but Burrow is the guy time after time. All those throws to Higgins, Samaje's picking it up, and we have to talk about, speaking of eating crow, maybe that's the theme of this episode, we need to talk about the Bengals offensive line. The Bengals offensive line, much maligned, mostly by us, and it has gotten slightly better. But the amount of pressure, true pressure, that they allowed in this game to get to Burrow was staggeringly low. The pass rush from KC is pretty good. Steve Spagnuolo knows what the hell he's doing. Chris Jones is a really good player. Burrow didn't get the kind of pressure that you would expect if you believe that the Bengals O-line has not progressed. The Bengals O-line has progressed, and it's a little bit stunning to see them play that well against a really quality coach and talented defensive line unit. Fun fact, Bengals offensive line has 4 holding penalties this year.
Like, total?
Total.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
That's almost like unbelievable.
Yeah,
across
it is
5 guys for 13 weeks. Yeah.
Terribly unbelievable. But the thing that it was like the unspoken thing. It was the thing that was missing that I was like, what's missing here? And I was like, oh, yeah, Joe Burrow absolutely running for his life on a majority of downs. I'm so conditioned and used to seeing that. And instead, you saw pretty good pockets. You saw pretty good stunt pass-offs and pickups. You saw obviously powerful run blocking for Samaje, who's really over the last 3 games since Mixon's injury sort of rounded into form as what looks like, you can call him a 1A. It's really funny. This is an offense full of 1As, right? T. Higgins is a 1A to Jamar Chase, and Samaje Perine has turned into a 1A to Joe Mixon, which might be even more surprising. The Bengals have the firepower and looked like they expected to win this game, and not many teams do that against Mahomes in Kansas City with good reason. Right? Mahomes has been the nail in everybody's coffin in the AFC for a long time. Burrow and company now, because this is really the offensive line and Perine and all those weapons and the defense playing well against a very good Kansas City offense. They looked like, no, this is ours. We've owned you the last 2. We're going to own you again today. And you're going to come through us, not the other way around. And they own tiebreakers against most of the AFC. It is not inconceivable that at the end of this thing, Cincy could be on top and KC could be looking up. And if that's the case, it'll be a little bit less surprising after this game, because that's the way this game looked on the field.
You mentioned the handing off stunts improving. Like, we saw this Bengals offensive line. We were 50 feet away from them when we were in Dallas week 2. And they couldn't handle stunts. They couldn't handle.
They did not have it together.
They were gelling. Again, all these guys had only been playing games together for, I can't remember how much they played in the preseason, but max like 6 weeks at that point, And so they were all kind of figuring each other out, figuring out each other's tendencies, what they like, what they don't like, how they like to handle stuff, how they like to pass stuff off. And, going up against a front like the Cowboys, who just loop all over the damn place all the time because they can, they struggled a lot. And Dallas just played cover 2 behind it and said, go hunt, Micah. And boy, he hunted. Bengals have gotten a lot better in terms of picking up stunts. The tackles have, in terms of handling, like, just one-on-ones outside, the tackles have gotten better. Contrast that to Kansas City. The top 2 tackles, and this is a bad stat, the top 2 tackles in the league in terms of pressures allowed are the Chiefs' 2 starting tackles, Orlando Brown and Andrew Wiley. Orlando Brown's given up 39 pressures, Wiley's given up 37. That's horrible. And it's not just there was a couple rough stretches. Like, no, it's been pretty consistent the entire year that when they go up against a competent edge rushing tandem, they get shredded. They get completely shredded. And the interior has held up okay. Certainly hasn't been their best year, but they've been solid. The tackles are just getting roasted. And I think that's part of the reason why, I can't remember if I mentioned it last show or not, how Mahomes has kind of like stopped doing that 11-yard drop and he's more sticking to like 7 to 9 yards. He's doing that because he knows that he's going to have to step up almost invariably because his tackles cannot handle edge speed at all. And so it's almost forced him to be better in the pocket than he used to be because you don't got Mitch Schwartz out there anymore. You can't get away with that shit. So he's had to become better in the pocket because of the lack of good tackle play they have. So this is just a tough matchup for KC. You know, they don't have the DBs yet to handle these guys one-on-one. Like they could in the future, but they're all so young. They're just young. They're inexperienced. And this is arguably the best core of weapons in the league. They're not quite ready to handle them man-on-man yet, which if you're going to play against the Bengals, you got to be able to hold up in man. They can't do that. They can't protect against the defensive line. And when all else fails, Joe Burrow is going to sit there and he's going to rip your heart out, even if you have a good call. So it is literally their boogeyman. It's their nightmare matchup. And if they play against each other in the playoffs, especially if it's in Cincy, I don't feel great about it for Kansas City, not going to lie. Like if they had to replay again tomorrow, I wouldn't feel great about it. And, if there was ever a team that I think could go to back-to-back Super Bowls in the AFC, it's probably them.
With Burrow at quarterback, I wouldn't put that past them. It does not seem at all far-fetched. Last year, them getting to the Super Bowl was like, yeah, maybe if everything goes right, but they have a lot of flaws, and usually flawed teams don't make it that far. Their flaws get exposed before that happens. They strung it together and then almost won the damn thing. And again, Burrow seemed unsurprised by that. All the rest of us were really surprised by that. No matter how much we liked him and believed in his abilities, it was still like, yeah, but it is a team sport. You drag them by yourself and then almost drag them over the finish line. This team is very, very different than that team.
They're better.
The offensive line, much better.
Yeah.
Offensive line playing better. I fully believed that Hayden Hurst was going to be an upgrade over CJ Uzomah. And people said, you're nuts. Uzomah had a good year. I said, Hayden Hurst is a better player. I think he's going to mesh really well with Joe Burrow. That's come to pass. T. Higgins has continued to develop, and he was already really good. Jamar was that guy. Mixon was good. They've found other ways to get him involved, and when he's come down, Samaje Perine has stepped up in a huge way. The defense is still playing well. The pass rush is a little bit better. They're getting, Hubbard had a sack in this game. This is a better and more well-rounded team, and that should just shake all the rest of the contenders in the AFC to their cores, because Burrow is Burrow, and if you surround him with a better shield, it's a tough out.
I still think they have a game coming up against Buffalo, if I recall correctly, in a couple weeks. So that's, if they're big game hunters, man. They're just going around collecting pelts, and they got one left to get in order to kind of secure that 1 seed. We'll see if they get it. So excited for that matchup. Let's get to 3-up number 2, which is a game that a lot of people were begging to get flexed to Sunday night, and it was not, because, of course, we have to watch the Cowboys slaughter another bad team in primetime, because that gets ratings. But 49ers-Dolphins, that was the game we all wanted to see. And it was definitely not what people expected, I would say. I think that if you said, oh, the Dolphins offense is going to struggle against arguably the best defense in the entire league, and they were going to make some really good plays up front, that would be an acceptable take. If you thought 49ers defense, outside of a couple long plays on coverage busts and missed tackles, were going to completely dominate the game, almost from start to finish, that would have been a little bit crazier of a take. But that's what happened. Again, outside of a couple long throws, even on the first play of the game, Sherfield got a 75-yard or something like that. Outside of that, Miami did nothing. They couldn't move the ball. The defensive line from the 49ers was all over Tua. They hit him early. They hit him often. They were just blasting a very good Dolphins offensive line. The DBs were hitting. The linebacker, Fred Warner was all over the place doing normal Fred Warner things. It was a clinic in how a fast defense can negate a fast offense. Like if you build your defense for speed, you can handle Miami, even though they have a whole bunch of speed, because all of a sudden that kind of advantage that Miami's always had in space was erased because the 49ers can move too. And so, I thought Miami was going to struggle a little bit. I didn't think they were going to get completely fucking obliterated, but they were. And then you factor in the other side, the thing that we didn't expect. Well, some people maybe expected it. Jimmy G getting hurt again. Unfortunately, tale as old as time at this point. But what I didn't expect was Brock Purdy to come in and maybe be better. Like, I don't know, EJ. I went through that film last night, and I was like, oh, 49ers might have something here. I really don't think that this is going to affect them like people expect. Brock Purdy went out there, and he executed the offense just as good, if not better, than Jimmy. There was a throw late in the second quarter, 3rd and 10. Miami's like, let's throw 0 at him. See what Mr. Irrelevant as a rookie can do against 0. And he stood in there, took a massive hit, dropped a shot over the middle to Kittle, knowing where the pressure was coming from because it was away from the slide. Knew it was coming, knew he had to hit the throw, and he hit the damn throw, EJ, and moved the chains, and they went down and scored and never gave the lead back. The offense was fine with Purdy. I still think it's going to be fine with Purdy. He looks night and day different than when we saw him in January. It is remarkable. And quite frankly, I do not think that the 49ers lost momentum at all. The defense, again, incredible. The offense, still good with Purdy. Yeah, 49ers, NFC contenders. Nothing changes for me. My opinion has not moved an inch.
I'm going to start with Purdy. And after this game, I have a theory that Brock Purdy went on vacation somewhere in January and sent somebody else to the Shrine Bowl.
It's so different. It's way different.
All I could say as I watched this tape a couple days ago, where was this guy in January? This isn't the same guy at all. Like, the transformation from what we saw at the Shrine Bowl, which was, okay, like, maybe practice squad. Mm-hmm. Maybe clipboard holder down the road. Maybe his top ceiling, Chase Daniel. Maybe.
Yeah.
Lifetime backup that makes a bunch of money would have been his ceiling in the pros. And I know all-star games are rough. Coming in, you got all new players, all new playbooks. It's an environment you're not used to. It's the first time. Like, I get all that. You still see guys make throws in shell drills. You still see guys in practice look sharp and understand and have command. And he heated up under the lights a little bit. He had some gamer in him. But that was it. That was all that was there. What you saw on Sunday against a very good defense coming in, again, with very few reps with the starters, you saw it a little bit in the preseason. He heated up in the preseason, and again, he hit one of these sort of hot heaters in the preseason where it was like, whoa, okay. Like, he took to some coaching. That's cool. Whatever it was, don't know what it was, but that looks a lot better than what we saw. But again, it's preseason. That's different. That is not a loaded and fast Miami team coming into your house, you coming in without the reps because Jimmy G was healthy and took all the reps of the starters. And as you said, not only continuing them, but making big-time throws under heavy pressure and popping up like, yeah, I fully expect to do this on time, on target, knew everything. Whole different player. Like, it is not the same guy to the point where I'm like, who did you send to the Shrine Bowl? Because it wasn't you. That's not the same guy. It is remarkable. And this offense in general is attacking people. I'm talking about the 49ers offense now. We've been saying that about the Dolphins offense all year, but this was the shoe on the other foot. This 49ers offense attacks people everywhere. We all know about Debo and the fact that, I think Chris Long said Debo Samuel weighs 350 pounds and you can't convince me otherwise because he's just made out of iron. You can't knock him over. We all knew that. We all knew that Ayuk was a gamer and had big game ability. We all know about Kittle. That's fine. Use check with Purdy at the trigger man was a whole different guy. It was like, that's how you use that guy because he's a super weapon at fullback. But Christian McCaffrey, the big trade, Leading rusher in this game, not very efficient at 3.9, 17 for 66, but also the leading receiver. That's Christian McCaffrey in a nutshell. He had 17 carries, 8 receptions for 80 yards, 10 and a TD in terms of the receiving. Like, that's the way that Kyle was envisioning CMC being used, but it's not just him. It's Kittle and Debo and Ayuk, and then Juszczyk on top of that. And Purdy looking like Tua, which is ridiculous because we just called out Tua like a week or two ago as playing at one of the highest levels in the NFL this year. The fact that a backup comes in and looks like that, right off the go, cold, no. Like, it's one of the most remarkable stories in the NFL. The Geno story, I say, is more remarkable because he's been doing more for longer. But this Purdy, I don't even want to call it a resurgence, ascendance, imposter syndrome, whatever it is. He looked every bit like he wanted to put the boot on the neck of the Dolphins and did. And the 49ers, we all knew about the defense. Jimmy Ward's Superman interception in this one was just guys flying around, playing fast. We've seen that all year. You weld these two things together, and what looked like a sort of shaky team 2 or 3 weeks ago before the Mexico City game does not look like a shaky team at all right now. They look like they are a power in the NFC, and that is not the way they've been. This was we're here and we're going to be really tough in December game, and that's the story.
If they host a playoff game, which they're nipping at the heels, they very well could. Seattle and them are kind of locked in that duel for division lead. If they host a playoff game, I'm trying to say this diplomatically. Getting them to the divisional round where they're matching up with Dallas, where they're matching up with Minnesota, they're matching up with Tampa. I'm kind of just putting them in the NFC Championship game right there because I think all of those teams, they would fucking eat alive. I really do. Like, the only one that I think that can really go toe-to-toe with them right now with how they're playing is Philly. Other than that, God, I don't see any other roadblocks in their future. Like, I think they have one more game against Seattle, if I recall correctly. I think they do, which is also a big test because Geno's playing out of his mind, and they got DK, and they got Lockett, and they got a whole bunch of good players. But, man, other than that, like, if you're putting them up against Dallas in the divisional round, sorry. Like, I like what Dallas is doing this year. 49ers are better right now. You put them up against Minnesota, sorry, 49ers are better right now. You put them up against Tampa, that's not even fucking close, which I actually think they're playing this week. I don't know what the spread is, but it's probably not very generous to Tampa. These two teams are not in the same universe right now. So, yeah, San Francisco's coming, man. They're coming. They're a really, really good, deep, well-coached team. They're it, man. They're it.
Mark it down, and they should wear those unis for the rest of the year.
Oh, they were fantastic.
They wore the Montana throwbacks, Montana Young throwbacks, depending who your quarterback allegiance is to. Like, those are elite, and they played like it at home, and they're going to continue to play like that. I'm with you on every matchup you named. Like, we called the Vikings sort of paper tigers. They are ripe for a knockout if they play a team like the 49ers. The Bucs are really struggling. They do not look like they're going the other way. They do not have all their stuff together. Cowboys could be one of those sort of upset games, but I would definitely favor the Niners in that game.
Cowboys would win if Micah does something crazy, which is very possible because it's Micah. But, boy, it would take a lot.
Yeah, it just feels like right now, if we had to do it right now, and we don't, we got a lot of games left, and there will be some twists and turns. There will be some spoilers, whatever else. But if we had to do it right now after Sunday's games, it's like take Philly, take San Francisco, put them in a game, winner goes to the Super Bowl. We'll just skip the rest. We don't want to skip the rest because there's good storylines, but like in reality, after Sunday's games, it's skip the rest. We need to see Philly versus San Francisco, and that'll determine who's coming out of the NFC.
Their schedule for the last 5 weeks: hosting Tampa, at Seattle, hosting Washington, at Raiders, hosting Cardinals.
Wow, Raiders and Cardinals is like
they have a legit shot of just running the table here and making a run. They really do. All right, now, speaking of the Eagles, by the way, 3-up number 3, we have to talk about that threshing machine over in Philly. They are winning in every single which way you can imagine right now. Sometimes the passing game doesn't have to do a whole lot because the running game takes over, including with Hurts' feet. Sometimes the running game doesn't do a whole lot, and A.J. Brown takes over. And this was the A.J. Brown game. He is, by far, one of the most physically dominant players at any position in the NFL. And watching him in this game, he almost kind of lulls you into a false sense of security because he's running speed out, curl, hitch, glance route, all this underneath stuff. And all of a sudden he hits you with a double move where he's faking like he's running his speed out, and then he'll wheel up and just run the fuck over that DB. Literally put him on the ground face first and get like a 45-yard touchdown. He looks like a linebacker playing receiver. He's built like a linebacker. He's like 225, 230. He is just incredible and so physical and so strong and so tough, so good with the ball in the air, had another contested catch later in the game. He is just insane. And when you have that kind of weapon on the boundary that even if the ball's not perfect, he can still make you right and he can still bail you out and have a big play, that completely changes a football game. Because sometimes things don't work super well for this Philly offense, especially with some of the injuries they've had. Sometimes the run game doesn't work. Sometimes, the defense is really playing against RPOs super well, and they're getting into the throwing lanes, and they're forcing Hurts to hold it, and then he has to run around. He's taking sacks. Sometimes defenses have a really good plan. But when you have a talent like AJ, and you have a talent like Devonta outside, plans can go out the window real quick if their dudes are better than your dudes. And that's why I would take Philly over pretty much any team in the NFC, other than maybe San Francisco, because San Francisco also has really good dudes that can match up 1-for-1 against them. But other than that, oh God, Philly's personnel is just overwhelming, like physically overwhelming.
Typically, talent levels in the NFL are closer than this. And we just sang the Titans' praises last week. We said they are a really good and solid football team. And guess what, folks? They are a really good and solid football team. And Philly embarrassed them. They made them look like a college team on defense. The double move where he ran over the DB. They had these guys in a blender. When I say they, it was A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith mostly. They had them completely flummoxed, turning the wrong way, falling over their feet, getting flat out run over because they so badly misjudged double move that they literally couldn't get their hips out of the way of A.J. Brown, and he just said, coming through. This is a really good team in Tennessee, and Philly is so much better right now that they just flat out took them any way they wanted to. Multiple times, and it was because of this roster that you referenced. So Howie has constructed a great, and that's great in capital letters, roster, and Sirianni and company are pushing all the right buttons. Those two things happen independently sometimes, but when they happen together, you get a team that is like Philly right now. They have dudes on dudes, and the coaching staff understand that, and they're using them all well. They're not leaning on one side or the other too much. On offense, what do you do against Brown and Devonta Smith? We've talked about this. You can cover one, you're not going to cover the other, and then Goddard's open. And you add in a wrinkle of Hurts runs and then the short passing game to Gainwell, which was the, offensive weapon du jour this week. Was, you're going to cover and Gainwell's going to float into that little 6-8 yard area and Devontae and AJ are pulling everybody out. Okay, we'll throw it to him and he's going to pick up 11 more after the catch. They did it multiple times. You're going to cover him and that guy, he's going to run left and Hurts is going to run right. And there's literally nobody left because you got to cover Goddard and Brown and Smith. And if you go with Gainwell, Hurts is open. If you stay on Hurts, Gainwell's open. There's just nothing to do. They put Tennessee in a complete blender. They had no idea what to do on defense, and it showed. On defense, Philly has very good outside corners, always a good way to start with defense. Slay and Bradbury, both guys that were added by Howie, and a dominant defensive line that has players everywhere, and they just battered Tannehill. 6 sacks from 5 different players on the day. All of them are on the defensive line. No corner blitzes, no safety blitzes, no linebackers coming through on coffee house. All the sacks came from the defensive line. This is a team that can legitimately rush with 4. no blitz help, which again frees up those corners to have an extra guy in coverage, and still get sacks. Their second string defensive line, this speaks to Howie's depth and the fact that he is relentless and he will just continue to add guys. Their second string defensive line would start on many NFL teams. Not most, but many. We're talking about Brandon Graham, who had a sack in this game, Sue, Jordan Davis, who they drafted this year out of Georgia, and then Milton Williams, who was a highly sought after draft pick and still has a lot of contribution. That defensive line of 4, I would take that defensive line of 4 for the Bears and start them right now. Right? And I would make the current Bears starting defensive line the second string to that line. And
you're not wrong.
They would be better at almost every position straight up. And probably every position. And the Bears aren't the only team. Like, there are multiple teams where the second string defensive line from Philly can come in and just start. You got those corners. The safeties are playing okay. They've made some really, I would say, judicious additions at linebacker. Kazir White was a guy we talked about wanting the Chargers to keep. He ends up moving to Philly. He's playing very well. Edwards is there. Like, this is a complete team on both sides of the ball.
Not just Edwards and not just White, by the way, because when that game, I don't know if you noticed this, when that game was out of hand in the fourth quarter, they brought in Nakobe Dean. Nakobe Dean played for 1 quarter and led them in tackles. Their second string linebacker could probably start on half the league, and he's just on the bench chilling because they don't need him. But, like, that's how deep this team is. He played for 15 minutes and led them in tackles. It's absurd. This roster is absurd.
Top to bottom, it is one of the best jobs. And if Howie doesn't win GM of the Year, look, I know John Schneider had a great draft, and I know the Seahawks are exceeding everybody's expectations. If you legitimately look at, like, the roster that Philly put together and the roster that the Seahawks put together, and you go, oh, Seattle's better, go get your eyes checked. Like, it's not. Philly is ridiculous. It looks like an all-star team. And typically when these teams get assembled, people go, oh, all-star team on paper, and they're not going to, this is an all-star team on the field. And that is a scary proposition, not only for the NFC, but also for anybody coming out of the AFC. And I do mean anybody. KC, Buffalo, you name it. They don't want to play Philly right now. Philly has answers for everything they do on both sides of the ball. Now, could they lose? Of course they could. Is it likely they would based on the matchup or even not be favored?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah, this is the best Eagles roster top to bottom since 2017. The one difference, though, is that Jalen Hurts, and this is saying a lot because Carson Wentz was an MVP candidate in 2017, Jalen Hurts is outperforming what Wentz was doing in 2017. He is a difference maker. Even behind a really good team, he is a difference maker. So, yeah, best Eagles team in a half decade, their best shot at a Super Bowl since then, and we'll see how far they go. Today's show is sponsored by Raycon. It's the holiday season now, and you're probably trying to find great gifts for everyone in your family, whether stocking stuffers or otherwise. And if you're still looking for ideas, Raycon has a whole bunch of premium audio products to choose from. There's wireless earbuds, there's headphones and speakers that all have customizable fits and great sound quality, and maybe most importantly of all, tremendous battery life at up to 54 hours. That's over 2 straight days of charge. They're also typically half the price of other premium brands too, and I've been using mine for literally over 3 years at this point, and they're still going strong. So if you want to check out any Raycon products either for yourself or as a gift for someone else, Raycon has a Countdown to Christmas event where every single day they have a new pop-up flash deal for you to take advantage of at the link in the description below. Or if you want to find them at a brick and mortar store instead, they're also in Kohl's and Walmart, which might be more convenient, especially for last minute gifts. Either way, buyraycon.com/bootleg is the website where you're going to get the best pure deal with an additional 15% off with code HOLIDAY, so check that out first. Again, that's buyraycon.com/bootleg, code HOLIDAY for 15% off. Thank you again to Raycon, and with that, let's get back to the show. With that, EJ, let's get to 2 down. 2 down, number 1, EJ. We mentioned it earlier that we were going to come back to it, and now we are here. We need to talk about Patriots play calling because it's rough. I have my own thoughts on it, but I'm going to let you lead this one.
Yeah, this is something we saw on Thursday, and as it was unfolding, we were asking questions on the live stream about, hey, what's the identity here? What are you leaning on? What can you get done against a pretty good defense when you need it to happen? And over again, the Patriots offense proved when they need things to happen, they cannot create in those situations. And that right there, folks, is a death knell in the modern NFL. If you cannot hang your hat and say, hey, it's 3rd and 4, it's 3rd and 5, we're going to go to A.J. Brown on that speed out, or we're going to hand it off to Derrick Henry and he's going to plow ahead. Like, if you don't have that guy, that play, that personnel, that identity, you're really nowhere. And the Patriots are wallowing around in nowhere. So Ramondre cranked out 5.4 yards a carry. Easy for me to say, but they only let him do it 10 times. That's it. And you saw very famously, the quarterback, Mac Jones, saying to Matt Patricia, throw it, running the ball's boring. These are the cracks that we talked about last week that show up on a sideline when a team is just getting a thumb put on its head and can't do anything. And the receiving core, still not good enough. It's not really even close. You compare them to most receiving cores in the league, and they are wildly undermanned. You throw it 41 times and only 5 are play action. Again, when you've been in the first half of the season running the ball very well, but again, they fell off that cliff. We talked about that last week as well. They really are sort of betwixt and between. They don't have a place to go. Early in the season, it was the running game. That's gone off. The passing game didn't come in. They didn't, pivot to the tight ends as sometimes New England's been able to do in the past. They're nowhere on offense, and it shows. Everybody knows. Nobody is afraid of really anything they can do on offense in terms of explosive plays, which are huge in the NFL. And this is not a one-off-season problem, it doesn't feel like. It doesn't feel like they are one guy away. Would a big alpha wide receiver really help? Sure, it always helps in the NFL. Would it be enough? No, because in the NFL, you can double that guy. You can put brackets on him, top and bottom, and if the rest of your roster looks like it does now, nobody's afraid of that. You can cover him with second and third stringers. So the Patriots have some work to do, a bunch of work to do, feels like the right way to say that, and it's not close. And that probably is the tougher pill to swallow for most New England fans who are used to seeing a dominant offense and a very good defense carry them to division titles and championship games and Super Bowls. This is not that team, and it's not that close.
You mentioned the in terms of like true play action. I'm not even talking about RPOs. True play action, threw it 41 times, only 5 of those were play action. Some people were like, they weren't really running the ball, so play action wouldn't work. Not necessarily true. Studies have shown that regardless of how much you run the ball or how effective you are at running the ball, play action still works because the defense, they have to respect the run. Like, they can't just not fit the run unless they're up by 2 possessions and there's 2 minutes left and there's literally no point. Linebackers are going to take a step up. There will be windows to throw to. You just have to actually commit to it and do it. And I feel like, there's been debate on, was Max saying that quick game sucks or was he saying that running game sucks? Either way, I think his point was he wanted to throw the ball down the field. All this like, hey, we're going to try to throw it into space and make them rally and tackle. Well, what is Buffalo really good at? Rallying and tackling. That's what they've been good at for a long time. He wanted to throw the ball down the field, specifically off play action. They weren't really doing that. And beyond that, one of my main issues with Matt Patricia is, not a whole lot of play action. They were calling a few RPOs. They had 6 total RPOs that they ran with Ramondre. So even though he had 10 carries, most of them were off RPOs. So he didn't even really get a whole lot of designed runs. They were just like, if the look is there, we'll run it with him. All of those RPOs were not with the actual runs that they're good with. 5 out of the 6 were counter, and then they had 1 draw RPO with like a bubble screen tag on the outside. But like all of their other RPOs were counter, run behind Hunter Henry, who can't block. Like they're acting like they still have Gronk out there at 265, 270 pounds that can handle Gregory Rousseau and wash him down for the 2 pullers to come behind on counter and open up the lane. No, You don't have that anymore. Hunter Henry was getting his ass kicked the entire night. And then you wonder why, Ramondre, every time they called an RPO, he was getting nothing. And then every time they called an actual run, he was getting something. Well, they weren't relying on Hunter Henry for inside zone. They weren't relying on Hunter Henry for outside zone. They were letting Ramondre kind of pick his way through. But on counter, if it's not there front side, it's just not going to be there. And if you're banking on Hunter Henry to kick out Greg Rousseau front side, guess what? It's not going to be there. So why they stuck with that over and over and over again, surely it will work this time. No, it fucking won't, Matt. Call something else. Call literally anything else. You can even call an RPO. Just call a different one. Call inside zone. Call duo. Call power. Call something that isn't counter behind Hunter Henry. And they refused to learn that lesson. And then they kept getting backed up. Now it's 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8. You're putting Mac Jones in positions where he has to survive against that pass rush. He's trying to hang in there and hope that Jacoby Myers comes open on a dig or something like that. It wasn't working. And that's, to be honest, that's the fault of the coaches. Even the one, sorry to go on a rant here. They called a bootleg, right? The one bootleg they called all game.
We can't be mad about that, right? I mean,
we can with how they designed it. You look at the film for that bootleg, and then they literally created a rub with their own guys, because you have the number 1 who's on the line of scrimmage, and then you have the number 2 who's kind of arc releasing around him, and they tripped each other up because, again, Rousseau knifing inside way away from the guy who's supposed to pin him on the boot. And it's dude, based on that alignment, how are you not coaching your guys to exchange that, have the number 2 take Rousseau, and then have the number 1, which I think was Tyquan, if I recall correctly, have him run the deep 7? It's are they not coached to exchange that based on alignment? Now you have guys tripping each other up, and by the way, Rousseau's still not getting blocked, so Mac has to run for his life and throw it under pressure. What the fuck are we doing? Who's designing this? Who's coaching this? It's you can tell a defensive coach is running the offense, because any offensive coach in the NFL worth their salt would literally tell his guys, hey, if the edge is lined up inside, exchange that shit. Now you're running the route and you're blocking. And they didn't do it. So I don't know. It's just bad, EJ. It's bad football. I hate it.
It is bad football. And yes, we do hate bad football. Even bad bootlegs. The namesake should be run correctly, and it wasn't. And I'm just going to play my sad card on the Patriots, not because I'm sad about the Patriots not being good, really about Hunter Henry, who is now a Patriot, didn't start out that way. I feel like he's one of those guys, little bit like Julio, some other guys, that was just so good early in his career, and then injuries just really robbed him of what he was. He is a shell of that, and it's a bummer because we love to see players with that much ability. I don't even want to say potential, because he showed that much ability early in his career, and it hasn't been there in a while now, and it's just kind of feels like the band that keeps touring well past their prime, and you're okay, just you're good for a 3rd and 5 out, but you were good for so much more than that earlier in your career. And it's not his fault. Injuries are a part of everyday life in the NFL. We talk about him every week, but he's one of those guys that really is not the player he was early in his career, I think largely because of injuries. And it's a bummer because he used to be able to do all that stuff. And so, bad on the coaches for not adapting and saying this is who he is now and trying to, again, just sort of hammer their head against that wall. But that seems like the Patriots' offense overall. Let's take a concept we're pretty sure that's going to work, just commit to it, and then not adapt when it doesn't work.
We hoped for the best in the summer.
No, we didn't.
Semi-expected the worst, but hoped for the best.
No, we didn't. We talked at great length about how worried we were and who was coaching this offense and would they put it together. It was a serious point of concern with us in our divisional previews.
We were crossing our fingers. Maybe there's something we don't know. Nope, didn't work.
There's Patriots magic sometimes. It's the magic bag is empty here for the Patriots on offense this year. They are going to have to go back to the drawing board, both on the personnel side and really the scheme and play calling side, and have what I would call a complete refit. It'll almost should be like Mac Jones is running a new offense next year.
Mm-hmm. God willing. God willing, EJ. All right, 2 down, number 2. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. Beyond the whole Deshaun Watson returning part of the story, which we have talked about at length multiple times, in terms of everything that happened with the lawsuits and the accusations and everything like that, if you want our thoughts on that, you can go back to the summer and listen to our very long discussion on that. Today, we're just going to focus on what happened on the field, which was not great, to be honest. Like, Cleveland's offense didn't look good. He was very clearly beyond rusty. I would say that this was the most painfully out of sorts the Browns offense has looked all year. Dare I say they look like they missed Jacoby Brissett a little bit. Now, will Watson get better as the season goes on? I don't know. Like, he hasn't played in 700 days. Who knows if he's going to get better? But in terms of just this one game sample size against a vulnerable, to be diplomatic, Texans defense, I get very hostile environment in Houston. Totally understand that. He didn't play well. There was a horrific interception he threw in the red zone. There was a whole bunch of really bad incompletions. Like, he wasn't accurate. He wasn't a good decision maker. Short of Nick Chubb doing Nick Chubb things, the offense was non-existent. And they scored 21 points on defensive special teams. Like, that was the only reason they won this game. It wasn't because of the offense. Like, the whole 27 points, total lie. Box score is lying to you. This was not the offense being productive. This was the defense and special teams playing the game of their life to pull off this win. Cleveland's in trouble, man. If this doesn't get better, I'm looking at a $250 million investment for like 150 yards passing and a pick, and that's not good for them.
We'll see how it plays out. Right now, rust was definitely expected. This was not a 1-year layoff due to injury. This was a very long time without playing against live action in the NFL, which is the top level of the sport and moves very, very quickly. It takes a while to get back to game shape, game speed. I understand all that. So the Browns QB, 12 for 21, 131 yards, no TDs, and that aforementioned horrible pick. 7 rushes for 21 yards, also pretty telling. Part of his game is the ability to move out of the pocket. He just ran for his life in this one. He looked around, said, "I don't like it," and took off and got about 3 yards a clip. This was not a weapon running. This was not designed to take advantage of a defense's shortcomings or liabilities. This was, oh shit, it's not working, gotta go. And there was a lot of that, and that's all to be expected. Does all that portend for the future? No. Is it difficult for Jacoby Brissett, who did all the right things and said all the right things, to sit on the bench and go, could have done better, and be completely right? It's one of those rugged transitions. They have to make it because of the financial commitment that they made. There is no way to say, well, right now Jacoby's playing better, so we're just going to keep playing him. That is not a viable, tenable option in Cleveland. It's impossible. And if it continues this way, and that is a big if, I am imagining it will improve. Their quarterback used to play at a higher level. We'll see if he can get back there after all of this. If it works out this way, this offseason will go down as one of the wildest in league history, where 2 top-level quarterbacks were traded for massive franchise leveraging deals and did bubkiss, both of them. Mm-hmm. And that is it's not even a 30 for 30, it's like a 60 for 60 in its own right. Like, they each get their own 30 for 30 because not necessarily expected, but could really turn the fortunes of, strangely enough, 2 teams that primarily wear orange.
And I will say, even with yesterday's result, I still look at the Texans over the next 3 years and I look at the Browns over the next 3 years. And if I had to choose which situation, I would expect to maybe long-term have better results. Based on yesterday's game, I'd probably say the Texans, because they didn't look good, but they also aren't, without a whole bunch of picks and committed to like a $50 million a year contract. Like, I would say the Texans are in a better spot going forward, because if that's what the Browns have to expect from their investment, if that's what they're getting, it ain't worth it. It straight up ain't worth it. So, we'll see what happens in the future. Again, he hasn't played in 2 years, so for reasons, many reasons, justifiable reasons. Totally justifiable reasons. So we'll see how it is going forward. But at least for now, good Lord, it was hard to watch. It was straight up hard to watch. All right, let's get to something that's at least watchable, and that is one fun for this week.
One fun for the week, Seahawks. They will not go away. This is a really interesting and fun team, and I said this in our divisional preview that no matter what happened, whether they won or lost, this team would be more fun to watch because Seattle, for all its strengths and wins and everything over the last decade, had become really formulaic. They would get behind, their defense would not play well, Russ would have to play some hero ball and pull them out either in the last half of games or the last half of the season, and that was the story. And it was old, and it was tired, and it wasn't very much fun to watch. We just talked about the Cleveland, game being no fun in the last segment. The Seahawks for the last 2 to 3 years weren't really fun to watch. This Seahawks team was going to be wildly different, had a different defense. They were obviously going to be different on offense because of Russ moving on. But regardless, I said this team's going to be fun to watch. A lot of young players, great draft. There's development stories. I didn't really expect them to win a lot, and they won't stop doing it. They win clutch football games. Geno is completely clutch. We just talked about how good that 49ers team is in this same division. They're one game behind. Seahawks 7-5, 49ers 8-4.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot closer than people who are not paying attention to this or wrote the Seahawks off and are not Seahawks fans and have not paid attention for the rest of the season, which is a lot of NFL fans. I get that. If you haven't looked behind the curtain, folks, take a peek. Geno Smith is playing like a top 8 QB right now, and that is not hyperbole. That's backed up by numbers. As of November 12th, EPA per drop back, he's 8th in the league. Offensive EPA per play, so that's not just his dropbacks, but all play, he's 11th in the league. Passer rating, which I agree is a flawed measure, he's 3rd, or was 3rd on the 12th. His current QBR after this last weekend, which is ESPN's somewhat complex measurement for quarterback measurement, is 64.8. That puts him 5th in the league, so 8th, 11th, 3rd, and 5th. This is a guy that also matches up with the eye test, what he's done late in games. He said in the very first game of the year, we saw him in Russ's revenge game in Seattle, and he said they wrote me off and I ain't right back. And everybody kind of laughed at that and went, ha, good line, Geno. He's continued to play like that.
He was serious. He was dead serious.
Better. He was dead serious. He believed. But somebody posted the question on Twitter, and I think it's a really interesting one. Have we seen a late career quarterback resurgence from a high pick that equals this one? And that really set me back. That put me back on my heels and made me put my thinking cap on and thinking back. And I thought, well, Alex Smith was terrible for his first 4 or 5 years, and he got really good at the end. But I don't even think late career Alex Smith is as good as Geno is playing right now. Honestly, if you want to see great quarterback play, and I mean great decision-making, mobility in the pocket, accuracy is unmatched. He is putting the ball right on the numbers over and over and over again. Just go back to the last game. You don't even have to go back to the last 5, although there are many examples in those. Just the last game, there are probably 6 or 7 plays. It's that's teach tape in multiple ways. The read, the pocket movement, the throw, the accuracy, the timing. Really, really good. And as I went back through the roles, I think the closest I can get is Rich Gannon going to the Raiders.
Well, that's a good one. In my head, I was thinking hey, maybe Michael Vick when he came back to the league, and he had a couple really good years in Philly. But the list is small. The list is really small.
It just doesn't happen that often, especially from a high pick. And this is special stuff. And I put out a tweet that says, if you think Seattle's taking a quarterback high in this next draft, you're probably not right. They have their guy for right now. And people got, but what about? And don't you think they'd be better off if? And I'm like, folks, The whole reason you get and use draft picks is to get a guy who plays like Geno is playing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the goal. And everybody's like, regression, and I'm like, quarterback, like, just picking a quarterback high does not guarantee you any chance of success. And say you mortgage your draft. Say you take all those picks you got and you go get insert quarterback X here. We'll just say CJ Stroud. You go get CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud plays exactly like Geno's playing right now. Are you happy with that? The answer is you're thrilled with that. You're like, we hit CJ Stroud is for real. You had real before. You just have to sign him to a contract. Like, he is with the team. He is understanding it. He is getting it. This is not a fluke. He is playing really, really, really good football. It's a great story, and you would be gambling all those assets to hope to get what you have right now. So, really great story. It's a ton of fun, at least to me.
The whole regression argument is fascinating to me because I'm like, okay, regress to what? What are you afraid of him being? Young Geno with the Jets before he got his jaw broken, where he was on a Rex Ryan team with John Idzik as general manager. That was a complete mess of a roster at that point. Like the whole 2008-2009 Sanchez era of the Jets, where they actually did have a pretty strong roster. Most of those guys were gone. The Jets had a horrifically bad roster when Geno came in, and he was asked to go save it. With Rex Ryan as his head coach, a non-offensive head coach, which most of the best head coaches in the league are offensive guys because of the relationship they have with the most important player, the quarterback. There are some very successful defensive coaches, but they better have an amazing offensive coordinator in tow with them. Some do, some don't. But so, you're asking a young quarterback, who had come from probably one of the purest forms of the spread in all of college football to come into that Jets team under Rex and Idzik and save a bad roster. So it's like you're afraid of him regressing to that. Why? The Seattle roster is orders of magnitude better. They actually have a legit receiving duo. They have like a legit offensive tackle duo. They have a legit OC. They have a great, again, defensive head coach, but they have a legit OC to go with that defensive head coach. They have a really deep running back room when they're healthy. I know, caveat. They have some very talented young tight ends. Like, they've got everything that he didn't have in New York. So what are you afraid of him regressing to? These are not the same situations. And I agree. Like, yeah, if CJ Stroud was playing like Geno is, not even just as a rookie, in year 3, if CJ Stroud was a top 10 quarterback, you would give him $100 million. You'd give him $200 million, actually, with today's rates. So, yeah, this is the best deal in football. They got a shitload of picks and rebuilt their offensive line and have more picks this year. High picks, mind you. And they're not paying $50 million a year for a quarterback that's playing like a $50 million a year quarterback. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And they saved the franchise with one decision, which was trade Russ, go with Geno. It literally saved the Seahawks. Ruined the Broncos, saved the Seahawks. So, yeah, if it were not Howie for GM of the year, it would be Schneider because of that one move. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. By the way, I was at this game, and I was in the first row on the end zone watching it live. Side note that's non-Geno, Tariq Woolen. Oof. Oh, baby. Like, I know that sometimes we pat ourselves on the back a little bit too much with our 10 gems when they hit. EJ. Oh, my God. That might be an all-time bootleg 10 gem because, like, seeing him, and it was actually really hilarious, watching him like 20 feet in front of me, lined up in press on Tutu Atwell was hilarious. Like the difference, like one of them looked like an NFL player, one of them looked like a high school player that had come in from a camp. It was so freaking funny. And he was beating people up in the line of scrimmage. He was making PBUs in space, using that range, using that length. He's insane. And I mean, a 5th round rookie playing like this. Were it not for Sauce Gardner existing, he would be the easy pick. I'm talking easiest of easy picks for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And they got him in the 5th round. It's Richard Sherman all over again.
The fact that he lasted to the 5th does surprise me. I don't mind us patting ourselves on our back for when they hit because, look, draft evaluation is a tricky business, and you are going to miss more than you hit. That is what NFL GMs do.
Guilty.
That's everybody. Like John Robinson, we just talked about him. And that's with 100 times, 1,000 times more resources than we have. It's a tough business, and when you pull a guy out of the pile, and we did that. Tariq Woolen. I pulled that guy out of the pile for that episode and said, no, it's not just height, weight, speed, because I learned my lesson with height, weight, speed corners. Stanley Jean-Baptiste, SJB.
Oh, he got everybody, though. Everybody loved him.
I didn't love him, but I
did.
I moved my needle farther than I should have because I was like, he just has so many tools. So I came in with that sort of caveat, that sort of caution with Tariq Woolen. Okay, yeah, he's insanely fast. He's really tall. He made Feldman's freak list. Cool. I want to see how he plays because, again, converted wide receiver. How does he play? And what I saw on tape of a year and a half worth of corner play was physical guy. First thing I want to see from a converted wide receiver playing corner. Physical guy, not afraid to press, not afraid to tackle, not afraid to dive in there, put his body in there. Had a better understanding of the corner position than he should have for that level of experience. Although he still got burned, you could tell that he was thinking about the right things. And I thought, that's it. You combined a dog mentality with an unlimited physical skill set, size, reach, jumping ability, speed, and the fact that he understands what the guy on the other side of the ball is doing and is already kind of anticipating some of those things. And hopefully with NFL coaching, those are the kind of things that get better. Hey, this is what you're going to see. This is how you play it. He could progress quickly. And there's more here than just height, weight, speed, which is why I was excited about him because the height, weight, speed is salivation stuff. The other is, man, he's pretty good for only having played a year and a half worth of corner. And what we're seeing on top of that is just a master course by Sean Desai saying, I've got a perfect, lump of clay here, and I'm going to mold it into one of the best defensive weapons in the NFL very quickly.
I think he was in our Ball of Clay episode too, wasn't he? He might have been.
He may have been. He should have been. But really,
he's the poster child for Ball of Clay.
Yeah,
if we're being
really
honest.
is.
When we saw him week 1 and there was a fade and he played against Cortland Sutton and damn near pushed him out of bounds. That was the play I was like, uh-oh. They might have something here.
We said this after week 1. If you go back to the bootleg pod after that, we said he frustrated Cortland Sutton. Even as a first game rookie, first game on the big stage in the bright lights playing against a very good wide receiver who is, quite frankly, his physical equal. Big, powerful guy with speed. He got Cortland Sutton pissed off. Mm-hmm. And if you can do that in your first game on an NFL field, you're doing okay.
Yeah, I love him. All right. Speaking of the Rams, by the way, and taking big shots, it's time for Bootleg Shot of the Week. You know what, EJ, I kind of expected this, but our Bootleg Shot of the Week winner for this week is Sean McVay for taking a shot from his own player. I'm trying to remember which tight end it was. 49, Roger Carter, coming off the bench for special teams, and he's slipping his helmet on. He can't see what's going on. McVay doesn't see him, turns his head, bam, straight to the jaw. McVay shook it off, to his credit, walking around, shook it off. But, if he had to get a little bit of dental work done after this year, I wouldn't blame him because that was a heater right to the face. So, McVay, I'm pouring this shot for you. In honor.
I was going to take a shot at Chunky Sue in honor of his sponsorship.
Oh, God, please don't.
I didn't have any. And McVay seems a little bit like a tequila guy, so I have Milagro Silver today in honor of the coach. Standing up for what his players catch on the field. This was not a soft one, folks. This was the real deal. He got whacked.
I'm trying to polish off this bottle of Rittenhouse Bottle and Bond, so it's a little hot. It's 100 proof, but, definitely not the hottest I've done. But Coach McVay, to you. Cheers. Oh, that's not a shooting whiskey. Oh, that's definitely not that's a cocktail whiskey, EJ.
Bingo! Got him. This,
Yeah,
on the other
okay.
hand, over ice is a lovely, both sipping tequila and as a shot, goes down very, very smooth. Almost no heat on the back end. So you took all the heat. I got the cool stuff
I
today.
feel like I'm breathing lava right now. Good Lord. It's only 100. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, you told me that it was coming in hot, so I am not surprised. But we've got
Yikes.
a lot of great nominees this week. Najee starts it off. Najee Harris with a ugly, violent stiff arm that needs to be seen. This was a statement stiff arm. We've had multiples of these. These are the kind that make bootleg shot of the week, and Najee's holding up the tradition here for the running backs. It was forceful.
Dribbled
and
him like a basketball.
He did bounce him off the turf. It's true, as all good stiff arms do. And speaking of forceful, Quincy Williams had a damn day for the Jets defense. I originally wrote this in as the Cousins sack, and then I got to the hit on TJ Hawkinson. And this is form tackle brilliance. Lines him up, good 5-6 yard run at it, lowers the head, puts shoulder right in the midsection, and knocks him backwards. Good 2-3 yards. Hawkinson's not a small guy. Quincy Williams could have had any of 3 hits today nominated. And the whole Jets defense was hitting in that game. I put out a tweet during that contest that they were bringing the physical heat. Jordan Brooks sack. This is the one you saw up close, so I'm going to let you take this one.
Oh, it was 20, 30 feet right in front of me. And like when it happened, it sounded like a car wreck. I wish I was recording it from my phone, which that's how close I was. I could get a freaking full image on my phone. And when Brooks came through, and you could see like Wolford stayed down for a second, like, ow, that really, really hurt. And I don't blame him because Brooks was coming through full speed and just took it to him. Massive, hellacious hit. Legal hit. I want to emphasize legal hit. But, oof. It was a rough one. Definitely one that would have kept me on the ground a lot longer than a professional athlete. He popped up eventually, but for a few seconds, I was like, you okay, bud? You all right? You going to shake that one off?
All the pieces still in the same place?
Yeah.
Javon Holland back on the list, hitting CMC, who we talked about as a centerpiece of the San Francisco offense. Well, Javon Holland centered him up and smashed him. He is no stranger to this segment. And the last one is his teammate, Christian Wilkins, with a forced fumble on Juwan Jennings right before halftime. Not very often you see a full-fledged defensive tackle hitting a wide receiver. This case, from behind, it looked like a truck just ran over a moped. And Juwan Jennings is a huge wide receiver by all standards. He was a tight end convert previously in his career. Christian Wilkins is no joke. Full run, 15 yards to catch up to this play on the sideline, and just blasted him. So
Looked like a lion chasing down a gazelle. If the lion was like 350, like it. Oh my God, it was that was honestly, I think, the most painful hit of the week. In terms of most impressive, like on the field play, I would say Holland is the most impressive because that was a 3rd and 3. Like that was a huge play to go from hash, and then closing on CMC in the flat. And I get it, the throw was late because it was under pressure and everything like that. But just to have the range and the burst to get to Christian McCaffrey and stop him short of the sticks on 3rd and 3. Like that play is a 99%er. It works 99% of the time. The 1% is when you play against Javon Holland. And then Christian Wilkins, that was the most painful. So, different flavors. We got Najee is the grown man stiff arm. Quincy Williams is the teach tape. Jordan Brooks is the car crash. Javon Holland is the crazy play. And then Christian Wilkins is the one where I'm like, he might have to go to the hospital. But really, really strong lineup this week. Might be the strongest we've had all year.
it was one of those weeks where some weeks it's really hard to get good, clean shots where nobody got hurt, nobody got flagged. There just aren't that many, or we miss them. Some weeks there just aren't that many because we put the call out to all of you, and you've even started to send those unprompted. Thank you very much for that, by the way. It makes our jobs easier and lets us see more fun football. This week, everywhere you looked, like I could have had Jordan Whitehead for 2 off that Jets defense. Quincy Williams had 3. I got into the Browns game, and I was like, there's a couple of good whacks there. You texted me about the Jordan Brooks one you saw in person. Javon Holland was from a listener, viewer. Christian Wilkins was on my reviewing of, again, the Miami tape. Najee Stiffarm was everywhere. Like, everywhere you went, there were multiple hits in multiple games where you're like, that could be one. That could be one.
Yeah, and that's not even counting the Monday game. The Monday game had some pretty hellacious shots, too. So, yeah, good week of football. Loved it. We had 5 games where both teams were above 500, so this is kind of when the cream of the crop is all meeting. By design, the NFL does it this way on purpose. They want all the best matchups, at least some of the best matchups, to be kind of saved for December. You know, Chiefs and Bengals and Bills, and they want all these contenders to have to go through each other late because that makes ratings better. And this week was the payoff of that. We had a lot of really good matchups. Some other really good matchups coming up this week. EJ, take us through our watch list for Week 14.
Got to start with Jets-Bills. This only 2 games separate the 2 teams. That doesn't seem like it's a statement you would have made before the season, but it's the reality now. A win would be huge for the underdog Jets in terms of evening up that division or getting close. Eagles, Giants. Eagles are great, but the Giants play everybody tough, and I don't care who they are. Brian Daboll has these guys believing, and they are not an easy out against anybody, even a team as powerful as the Eagles. Bucks, Niners. Brady gets to come home. This is a homecoming game to the place that he wanted to be the quarterback. He wanted to be the next Joe Montana. It didn't work out. Feels like a little bit of a trap game for San Francisco. We just spent, 20, 30 minutes pumping them up and saying how bad the Bucks are. Feels like Brady could reach back and grab one here and make this tough for him. And then fascinated by Panthers and Seahawks. Seahawks, an ascending team that have it in the right place. Panthers, a team that turned it around mid-year, fired their coach, have been doing great things under Wilkes. And it's just an interesting sort of going to be tougher than you think it is because, again, the Panthers roster is loaded with players, but they haven't all quite figured it out. Seahawks are clicking right now. Going to be probably a better game than a lot of people would think just looking at the lineup.
If the Bucks win this game, it will be purely because of old man spite from Tom Brady. That is the only way they win. And I'm not ruling it out. It's unlikely, but I'm not ruling it out just because when that man turns it on and he directs his hatred, God, it's hard to beat it. I mean, God, look at the Saints game. They were down like 16-3 with 4 minutes left, and they still won that game.
Tom Brady laser eyes. That's
Dude,
what it is.
He's insane. Like, I get it. Mark Ingram kind of lost the game for him, but still. Stuff just happens when Tom Brady's on the field. All right, plugs for this week. EJ, what you got for Bears over Beers?
Bears over Bears, we've pivoted a little bit, but there were a lot of really good performances versus the Packers from young players. Not exactly sure who I'm going to focus on, but really at this point we are looking towards the future and seeing which young players are going to play a role. Moving forward, we've already talked about players like Jack Sanborn, and maybe we need to go back to that. But Justin's doing the Justin thing, and I think that's all understood at this point. It's really about who are some of the hidden gems here who are going to be maybe depth players, maybe role players, but are going to create the foundation after that huge free agency burst that's coming next year.
For Film Room on my end, I'm working on one. This was not the original topic I thought I was going to be doing for the next episode, but I got a lot of comments on a Mike White short that I did on like a 3rd and 8 throw to Elijah Moore, and it was against cover 5, which is the most common coaching term for cover 2 man. It's from the Sabanese, Nick Sabanese, if you're familiar with his language. And I would say, like, Sabanese is the most common coaching language, him and Aranda, and, depending on the part of the country you're in, because so many people go to different clinics and they learn that 2-man is cover 5. That's what they call it. And a lot of the comments were like, what the fuck is cover 5? And so I'm doing an episode on cover 5, essentially cover 2-man, why it's called like that, how it's used in certain defenses, situations where it's used, what beats it, and we're just kind of doing a whole deep dive on that specific coverage because when I say the words cover 5, people sometimes that aren't familiar with Saban coaching language want to know what that is. So we're going to do a deep dive on that.
So not Maroon 5, but Cover 5.
Cover 5. Cover 5. It's a Maroon 5 cover band.
I think I'd rather watch your video than a Maroon 5 video, but that's just me.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Made decent time this week, not going to lie. Got through a lot in a very short amount of time. We want to thank all of our executive producers for helping to make this show possible. Marat, Consti, Caden, Andrew, Taylor, Liam, Connor, Joey, Mike. We've got a lot more than we used to, and I'm really psyched about that because that helps keep the show going. All of you guys are legends. We fucking love you. Thank you for being executive producers for the show. If you are also interested in being a producer, you can go to our Patreon and check that out, even if you don't want to be at that level. Really anything on the Patreon is good with us because it helps us do this for a living, and we really, really appreciate that. So if you're watching this deep into the show, thank you. We love you. We'll see you on Thursday for the live stream. Raiders, Rams, here we go. EJ, let's get it.
Let's get it. Thanks to everybody who supports the show in any way, watching, listening, telling friends, showing up on Thursdays, Super Chats, Patreon. There's a million ways to do it. We wouldn't be here without you. It's that support that keeps us going. And we'll see you next week. Take care.
Later on.